If you blame yourself for everything, this is for you. It usually starts in the quiet moments. After everyone has left the room. After the fight is over. After the damage is done. You replay it all. The words that were said. The look in someone's eyes. The sound of disappointment or silence. And even if you were the one who was hurt, somehow, the question still circles in your mind. Was it my fault? Maybe no one ever told you how to handle conflict. So instead of standing up for yourself, you stood against yourself. Maybe you were raised to be the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who always smoothed things over. So now, every time something goes wrong, a miscommunication, a moment of tension, a shift in someone's mood, you feel it land on your shoulders. You take responsibility before anyone asks you to. You apologize for things you didn't do. You internalize problems you didn't create. And somewhere deep inside, you truly believe, if I can just figure out what I did wrong, maybe I can make it right. Maybe I can make them stay. Maybe I can finally feel safe. But let me offer you something softer tonight. Something your nervous system, your younger self, your tired heart needs to hear. Not everything was your fault. You were not responsible for how they treated you. You were not the reason they left. You were not the cause of their unhappiness. You were just there, trying your best, loving the only way you knew how, walking on eggshells you didn't place there. Somewhere along the way, you became convinced that love had to be earned, that if someone was upset, you must have done something to deserve it. But here's the truth you were never given permission to believe. It is not your job to absorb every crack in someone else's world. It is not your role to carry pain that wasn't placed by your hands. And it is not your fault that they couldn't love you gently. Blame is heavy, and when you carry it for too long, it doesn't just live in your mind. It settles in your body, in the tightness in your chest, the restlessness before sleep, the guilt that shows up even on good days, asking if you're allowed to feel peace. But tonight, just for these few minutes, I want you to gently imagine what it would feel like to set some of it down, to exhale the pressure, to unclench the apology, to whisper to yourself, maybe, it wasn't mine to carry. You were not here to be perfect. You were not here to be everyone's healer. You were not here to blame yourself into burnout. Just to keep love close. What you went through was real, but so is your right to heal. So if you're lying awake tonight, wondering what you did wrong, maybe you didn't. Maybe you were just there, doing your best, while someone else didn't know how to meet you in kindness. And that's not on you. You were not broken. You were not too much. You were not hard to love. You were just taught that love meant shrinking. And you've outgrown that story now. So rest tonight, let go of just a little of that weight. And repeat this to yourself as you drift. Not everything was my fault. And I don't have to carry what was never mine. You didn't choose to be the one who always took responsibility. It wasn't something you woke up one day and decided. It was something life taught you, conditioned you to carry. You were the one who made things better. The one who kept the peace, even if it meant sacrificing your own peace of mind. The one who looked around in moments of chaos, and quietly, automatically thought, this must be because of me. Maybe it started in childhood. You became the emotional sponge, absorbing the discomfort of everyone around you, hoping that if you carried enough, they wouldn't have to. But the truth is, responsibility without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You were never supposed to carry that much. You were never meant to be the container for everyone else's mess. You were never designed to carry guilt in exchange for love. But when responsibility becomes your identity, you start to forget what it feels like to simply exist, without constantly proving your goodness. You feel guilty for resting, for saying no, for having a bad day, for making a mistake, for not anticipating what someone else needed before they even asked. But here's something you may have never been told. You're allowed to put some of it down. You're allowed to stop overfunctioning. You're allowed to let others hold their own emotions. You are not the reason someone else is struggling. You are not to blame for the wounds others haven't healed. And you are not responsible for fixing pain that you didn't create. Your worth is not measured by how much you can carry without breaking. You deserve love that doesn't require emotional labor as payment. You deserve rest without guilt. You deserve to take a breath right now and feel what it's like to not hold the entire world in your chest. So just for a moment, close your eyes, let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench, let your breath deepen, and whisper to yourself, I don't have to fix it all. I'm allowed to be tired. I'm allowed to stop holding what isn't mine. Because responsibility, without compassion for yourself, is not strength, it's quiet suffering, and you've suffered long enough. Tonight, let the healing begin. Not by doing more, but by finally letting go of what you were never meant to carry. You say, sorry, without even thinking about it anymore. When someone bumps into you, you say it. When you speak up, you soften your truth with an apology. When you take up space, even just a little, you instinctively shrink back with a quiet, I'm sorry, but what are you really apologizing for? Existing, needing something, taking up oxygen in a room that told you only quiet people were loved. You weren't born thinking your voice was too loud, or your presence too much. You learned that over time, from moments that told you, directly or indirectly, you're easier to love when you don't need anything. So now, you minimize your feelings. You apologize for your reactions. You downplay your joy, so no one feels threatened. You dim your sadness, so no one feels uncomfortable. And over time, that constant apologizing does something cruel. It convinces you that your very existence needs to be justified. But let's challenge that thought tonight. You are not a problem. You are not an inconvenience. You are not a burden. Because you feel deeply, or need connection, or simply show up as your full self. The world may not have always made room for you, but that was never your fault. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. Your needs are not too much. Your presence is not something to apologize for. You've been carrying this unspoken guilt for so long. The guilt of asking, the guilt of feeling, the guilt of being human. But let me say what you've needed to hear for a long time. You do not have to apologize for needing comfort, for wanting love, for speaking up, for having a bad day, for asking someone to stay, for wanting to be held. You are not broken, and as you drift into sleep, softly remind yourself, I don't need to apologize for being here. My existence is not a mistake. I am enough. Even in silence, somewhere along the way, you were taught that peace was more important than honesty. That silence was safer than expression. That calm on the outside was worth more than truth on the inside. So, instead of saying, that hurt me, I feel alone, I need you, you learn to smile, to nod, to suppress, to say, it's okay, even when it wasn't. And while everyone else moved on, you were still carrying it. The weight of unspoken words. The echo of what you couldn't say. The ache of feeling unseen. In moments that mattered the most, you became the keeper of peace. The emotional filter. The one who adjusted, softened, edited, erased. So others could stay comfortable. Even when you were breaking. But here's the cost. When peace is forced, it becomes pressure. When pain is silenced, it becomes shame. And when you keep everything in, you start to believe your pain doesn't deserve space. But your pain does deserve space. Your story matters, even if it's messy. Your feelings are valid, even if someone else doesn't understand them. Your truth doesn't have to be convenient to be worthy of being heard. You were never meant to make yourself small, just so others wouldn't feel discomfort. That's not peace. That's performance. True peace doesn't come from pretending. It comes from being real. Being held in your honesty. Being loved without the requirement of being easy. So let's practice something together. Right now, just in your mind. Think of a moment where you stayed silent. To protect the room. A time you smiled. When what you really needed was to cry. Now softly say to yourself, I didn't deserve to hide. I didn't deserve to disappear. I didn't deserve to suffer in silence. You were allowed to feel. You were allowed to speak. You were allowed to be loved. Even when your emotions are messy. Because keeping the peace should never cost you your own. Tonight, let your body rest. Knowing you no longer have to perform calm. You can be real here. You can be soft here. You can exist without apologizing. This is your space now. Your peace. And it starts by honoring the parts of you that were never allowed to speak. You were just a child. Still learning how the world worked. Still discovering what love was supposed to feel like. Still figuring out how to be enough. But even then, before you had the words to explain it, you felt it. The shifting moods. The walking on eggshells. The way the room could change. Because someone else was angry, sad, cold, or disappointed. And somehow, you made it your job to fix it. Maybe you were the difficult one. Or maybe you were the quiet one. It doesn't matter. You became the one they projected things onto. The easy target. The one who didn't talk back. The one who absorbed the tension. So no one else had to. You didn't ask for that role. It was handed to you. Silently, subtly, by people who didn't know how to carry their own emotional weight. And so you became the scapegoat. Blamed for things that were never yours. Held responsible for dynamics you didn't create. Made to feel like the reason love was complicated. Or the reason peace never lasted long. But you weren't the problem. You were a mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. Reflected back. When they couldn't face their own guilt. They called you too sensitive. When they didn't know how to say sorry. They made you apologize. You were never too much. You were never the root of their chaos. You were just the one who carried what others refused to unpack. And now, you're exhausted. Because carrying that long-held guilt is like dragging a shadow that was never yours in the first place. So tonight, let's speak to that younger version of you. The child who stood there, wondering what they did wrong. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture them. Small hands. Soft voice. A heart that only ever wanted to be loved. And safe. And seen. Now whisper this to them. You didn't deserve the blame. You were never the villain. You were just a kid. Trying to survive. And now you get to set that story down. You get to rewrite what love feels like. You get to rest in the truth that being blamed doesn't make you bad. You were good, even when you're not perfect. Even when you're still healing. Even when the old voices get loud at night. You were not what they projected. You were healing, and that's enough for tonight. There's a moment after something goes wrong, where your mind rushes to the same place. It must have been my fault. You replay the scene. You dissect your words. You wonder what you could have done differently. Even when deep down, you know, it wasn't really on you. But blame became a habit. Not because you're careless, but because somewhere along the way, you were taught that taking the blame made things easier. Maybe it softened someone's anger. Maybe it kept the peace at home. Maybe it helped people like you more. Maybe it gave you the illusion of control in a world that felt too unpredictable. You blamed yourself so that others wouldn't blame you louder. You blamed yourself to feel a little safer. But now, you do it automatically, even in moments that aren't yours to carry. Even in situations where the hurt was never your doing. And the saddest part, you're harder on yourself than anyone else ever could be. You take one misstep and turn it into a character flaw. You get overlooked and tell yourself you weren't good enough. Someone pulls away and you assume you ruined everything again. It's not just guilt. It's self-punishment disguised as responsibility. But let's pause here. Let's breathe into this moment. Because not everything broken was your fault. Not every silence is something you caused. Not every person's pain is yours to heal. You are not responsible for every misunderstanding. You are not the reason they didn't show up. You are not the cause of someone else's unkindness. Let that truth be a soft landing tonight. A place to rest your tired thoughts. Because the habit of blame is just that, a habit. And habits can be unlearned. Gently, with compassion, with grace. You don't need to defend yourself right now. You don't need to make sense of the past. You don't need to fix anything tonight. You just need to let go of what you were never meant to carry. So take a deep breath in and whisper, not everything is mine to hold. Again, not everything is mine to hold. You were allowed to walk away from the guilt that was never yours. You were allowed to rewrite the story where you are no longer the villain. In every scene, tonight, let sleep meet you. Not with questions, but with quiet. You are safe here. You are not at fault. And somewhere along the way, you started internalizing a message that was never yours to hold. If they're upset, it must be because of me. So you tried to be softer, calmer, kinder, quieter, more agreeable, less you. You tried to prevent the storm by controlling your own sky. But here's the truth you weren't told enough. Other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Let me say it again, slowly. Other people's emotions are not your fault. You didn't cause their sadness. Just because you had a boundary. You didn't cause their silence. Just because you asked for more. You didn't make them angry. Just because you couldn't read their mind. People are allowed to feel things. And you are allowed to not carry it for them. Because empathy is not the same as guilt. Compassion is not the same as self-erasure. You can be a kind, loving person without taking ownership of someone else's storm. You're not the fixer. You're not the buffer. You're not the emotional sponge you had to become as a child. You were your own person. And their mood is not a measurement of your worth. Take a moment with me now. Place your hand gently on your chest. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. Feel the quiet rhythm of life happening inside you. This is your body. This is your peace. This is your emotional home. And not everyone gets to move in. So tonight, if you feel that old panic creeping in, the one that whispers, "What did I do wrong?" Gently remind yourself, I am not responsible for how they feel. I am responsible for how I care for myself. Let the tension in your shoulders go. Let your jaw unclench. Let your heart return to itself. You don't have to carry them anymore. You were never meant to. You were not a fixer. You were not the problem. You were simply someone who deserves to rest without guilt. For once, sleep deeply tonight, knowing this. You were allowed to be at peace, even if someone else isn't. It could have been something small. A forgotten message, a missed deadline, saying the wrong thing, not saying anything at all. But as soon as it happened, your stomach dropped, your heart started racing, your thoughts circled like vultures. Why did I do that? What's wrong with me? They probably hate me now. And then, the shame creeps in, quiet at first, like a whisper behind your ribs. But it grows quickly, until it feels like your entire identity. Suddenly, you're not someone who made a mistake. You're someone who is a mistake. But listen to me, gently and clearly. You were allowed to be human. You were allowed to slip up. To forget things. To say the wrong thing. To not get it perfect every time. Your worth is not tied to flawless performance. Your value does not disappear because of one imperfect moment. You learn to feel shame because somewhere along the way, the bar was set impossibly high. Mistakes weren't treated as moments. They were treated as proof that you were inadequate, broken, too much, or not enough. And so you began to believe that every small error confirmed the worst stories about yourself. But that's not truth. That's trauma. Mistakes are part of the design. They are not flaws in your character. They are signs of being alive. Let's reframe the story now. Instead of saying, "I ruined everything," try saying, "I'm still learning, and that's okay." Instead of spiraling into self-blame, try pausing and asking, "What would I say to someone I loved if they did the same thing?" You would forgive. You don't need to punish yourself to prove you care. You don't need to carry shame as a form of penance. You only need this: a little grace, a little softness, a little space, to be imperfect and still deeply loved. So as you settle into rest, know this: you did not fail just because you slipped. You were not bad because you forgot. You are still worthy, especially now. Somewhere deep in you, there's a quiet voice that says, "If I can solve it, they'll stay. If I can fix it, they'll love me. If I can hold it all together, I'll finally be enough." You've worn this invisible badge of responsibility for so long. You've forgotten where you end and where other people's problems begin. You are the one they call when things fall apart. The one who listens when no one else does. The one who rearranges their whole schedule just to be available when someone needs saving. And you've told yourself this is love. This is how you stay close. This is how you make yourself worthy of being kept around. But deep down, you're tired, because the weight never leaves your hands. Because the love never really feels safe unless you're doing something to earn it. Because no one asks how you are. They just assume you're okay. And slowly, quietly, you start to disappear under the title of fixer. But here's what no one tells you: fixing everything isn't love. It's fear dressed up as loyalty. You're afraid that if you stop fixing, they'll leave. That if you set a boundary, they'll replace you. That if you say no, you'll become invisible. So you keep giving, and giving, and giving, until you start resenting the very people you're trying to save. You lose yourself, trying to make sure no one else breaks. But you are not a tool. You are not a repair shop for other people's damage. You are not here to earn love by bleeding for it. Love should never come with a job description. You are allowed to be loved without fixing, without over-explaining, without sacrificing your peace to hold together someone else's chaos. Let me ask you something now, and take this slowly. Who would you be if you weren't constantly fixing? What would it feel like to be chosen for your presence, not your usefulness? What would it feel like to be loved, even when you had nothing left to give? That kind of love exists. But you have to stop proving you deserve it in order to finally receive it. So tonight, as your head sinks into your pillow, give yourself this permission: I am not responsible for saving everyone. I am allowed to rest. I am worthy, even when I'm not fixing. Say it again, softly. I am worthy, even when I'm not fixing. You are loved, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And that is more than enough. You replay the conversations, all the ones that ended with silence, the ones that drifted into distance, the ones that suddenly stopped without warning. And whether they ghosted, pulled away, or grew cold, you whispered the same thing to yourself every time. What did I do wrong? Maybe you were too much. Maybe you were too honest. Maybe you asked for too much. Maybe you asked for anything at all. And now you carry this constant fear that people will leave, and it will be because of you, that somehow, some way, you were the breaking point, the reason the story ended. But here's the gentle truth, the one your inner critic keeps trying to ignore. You are not always the reason they leave. Sometimes people go because staying requires growth they're not ready for. Sometimes you are not broken glass. You are not the mistake they regret. You are not the wrong choice they silently resented. You are allowed to be human, with needs, feelings, boundaries, dreams. You are allowed to want to be chosen, and still be whole even when you're not. So if someone left, or changed, or faded out quietly, let it hurt, yes. Let it ache. But don't let it turn you into the enemy of your own story. Because they're leaving does not mean you were too much. It does not mean you were hard to love. It only means they weren't your person. Take that in, breathe it slowly. They weren't your person, and that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a redirection toward what you truly deserve. Someone will stay, someone will show up, someone will choose you, without you having to shrink, guess, or overgive. But first, you have to stop blaming yourself for the exits you didn't cause. So tonight, let your heart rest in this truth. You are not the reason love leaves. You are the reason it will feel safe to stay. One day, with someone who sees you, all of you, and still says, I'm not going anywhere. And until then, sleep gently. You are still whole. You are still lovable. You are still enough. Even now. Especially now. I'm sorry. You say it before you speak. Before you ask a question. Before you take up space. Before you make a sound. You say it when you walk into a room. You say it when someone bumps into you. You say it when your needs feel inconvenient. When your voice feels too loud. When your presence feels like a burden. You're trying not to place on anyone. But here's the part no one sees. You're not apologizing for something you did. You're apologizing for being, for existing in a world that taught you. Your presence needed permission. Maybe it started in childhood. When your emotions were too much. Or your questions were met with sighs. Or your pain was met with silence. Maybe you learned that if you kept quiet, kept small, kept apologizing, you could stay safe. So you shrank. And every time you felt like you were too visible, too human, too real, you apologized. But here's what I want you to know, softly. You do not need to apologize for being here. You do not need to shrink your needs to be worthy of kindness. You do not need to over-explain your feelings to be allowed to feel them. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are not the inconvenience you keep apologizing for. You are a soul, breathing, feeling, healing. You are a voice, valid and real and deserving to be heard. You are a heart, beating with the quiet hope that someone will see you and not ask you to be less. Let that someone be you. Tonight, let this be the night you stop whispering, sorry, to yourself, just for taking up space in your own life. So here's a gentle practice. Place your hand on your chest. Take a slow, full breath in. And instead of, I'm sorry, say this to yourself. I'm allowed to be here. I'm allowed to exist fully. I don't need to apologize for being alive. And again, softer. I don't need to apologize for being alive. Because you don't. You never did. You were meant to take somewhere along the line. You were taught that peace had to be earned. That stillness had to be justified. That rest was something granted only after everything was flawless. So you pushed yourself harder. Tried to get everything right. Double-checked your words. Replayed your actions. Held your breath in relationships. Afraid that one wrong move would make it all crumble. And when things did fall apart, you blamed yourself. Because you weren't perfect. Because maybe you weren't enough. But what if I told you that peace was never meant to be a prize for the perfect? What if peace is not a finish line, but a birthright? What if you were always allowed to rest, even when the dishes aren't done, even when your inbox isn't empty, even when your healing isn't complete? What if you could be messy and still deserving of calm, broken and still worthy of softness, unfinished and still completely enough? You've been conditioned to believe that perfection is the price of love, that you have to have it all together to be respected, that your flaws disqualify you from stillness and gentleness. But that belief is a lie, rooted in survival, not truth. The truth is this: peace belongs to you, now, just as you are. Not after the checklist is complete. Not after you fix yourself. Not after someone finally says you're good enough. Just now. With your fears. With your doubts. With the mess you think disqualifies you from calm. So tonight, you don't need to fix one more thing before you allow yourself to rest. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to earn your breath. You are already whole enough to deserve softness. Take a moment with me, right now, and place your hand on your heart. Feel it beat, not perfectly, not with precision, but with life. That's what you are, not perfect, but present, and that's more than enough. So as you settle into sleep, say this with me, quietly, if only in your mind. I am allowed to rest. Even if everything isn't perfect. I am worthy of peace. Right here, as I am. Let that be your lullaby tonight. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are already enough. Exactly as you are. There was a time in your life when you had no choice but to be strong. You had to grow up fast. You had to make decisions with no help. You had to carry grief, silence your needs, and pretend you were fine. Because no one else was going to fix it for you. You became your own shelter, your own comfort, your own protector, your own everything, and somewhere deep inside, that version of you still lives. Watchful, guarded, tense. Ready to step in, ready to defend, ready to hold it all together, alone. Because for so long, you had to. But tonight, let me speak directly to that part of you. The one who stayed awake when no one else knew. The one who swallowed every tear. The one who carried the weight. With no one to help share it. You don't have to live like that anymore. It was never your fault. That no one showed up when you needed them. It was never your fault. That you had to become everything to yourself. But now, you get to choose differently. You get to breathe. You get to ask for help. You get to rest. You are no longer trapped in the past, where you had no choice. You're here now, with more tools, more compassion, more freedom than you had back then. You don't have to abandon that strong version of you, but you are allowed to thank them and gently say, you don't have to be in charge anymore. I'm safe now. Say it with me, softly. So tonight, let go, not of your strength, but of the need to always carry it all alone. You made it. You're still here. And now, you're allowed to heal. Not just survive, not just cope, but truly heal. Slowly, gently, at your own pace. And never alone again. There's a quiet misunderstanding woven into your healing. One that says, if I forgive them, it means what they did was okay. So you hold on. You carry it. You stay angry. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid that letting go will erase the pain, the betrayal, the way it changed you. You don't want your silence to look like approval. You don't want your grace to feel like surrender. But here's something soft and sacred that I hope you let in tonight. Forgiveness is not an apology. It's not an excuse. And it's certainly not permission. Forgiveness is a doorway, not for them, but for you, because the truth is, they may never understand what they did. They may never feel your pain. They may never own the way they broke something sacred in you. And holding on, replaying it, defending it, explaining it, won't change what they refuse to learn. So forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about unhooking yourself from the weight that's been dragging you under. Forgiveness says, I no longer want to drink the poison they poured into me. Forgiveness is choosing your peace over their memory. It's standing at the edge of your past and whispering, I don't need justice to heal. I just need freedom. And you deserve that freedom. Even if they never said sorry. Even if they never acknowledged your pain. Even if the scars still burn sometimes. Tonight, you can make a different kind of choice. You can say, I forgive you, not because you earned it, but because I'm ready to be free. Because you are. You are ready to stop letting what they did define how you love, how you trust, how you breathe at night. You were not their choices. You were not their absence. You were not their cruelty or confusion or fear. You were your own becoming. So let forgiveness be soft. Let it be yours. Let it be quiet, private, and real. Not for them, never for them, for you, for your sleep, for your peace, for the next version of you that deserves to walk without carrying that weight anymore. Tonight is a good night to set it down. You're not forgetting, you're freeing, and that is everything. Somewhere along the way, you learned how to become who they needed. You adjusted your tone, you changed your laugh, you kept quiet when it hurt. You dimmed the bright parts of you that made others uncomfortable, and maybe it worked. Maybe you kept the peace. Maybe you were liked. Maybe you were chosen, but only in pieces. And deep down, you began to wonder, would anyone ever love me if I didn't edit myself first? It's exhausting, isn't it? Performing a version of yourself that fits just enough to be accepted, but never fully known. But tonight, here's the truth I want you to hear, slowly, softly, and fully. You do not have to be anyone else to be worthy of love. Not the stronger version, not the quieter version, not the version who never asks for anything, not the version who's always easy to be around. Just you, messy, growing, flawed, real. You were not hard to love. You were not too much. You are not only lovable when you're convenient, or impressive, or fixing everyone else's chaos. You deserve love that doesn't flinch when you're honest, that doesn't vanish when you have needs, that doesn't only show up when you're smiling. You deserve love that stays when the mask comes off. And that begins with you staying too, with you choosing to stop abandoning yourself just to be good enough for someone else's comfort. You were allowed to be loud. You were allowed to be soft. You were allowed to be tender, angry, complicated, joyful, and still absolutely deserving of unconditional love. You don't need to shrink to be worthy of being seen. So tonight, as you close your eyes and begin to rest, let go of the version of you that you created just to survive. You're not in survival anymore. Now, you get to be whole. Now, you get to be loved for who you are, not just for who you've learned to be. Say it softly with me. I am enough. I don't have to become someone else. I am already worthy of love. Let that be the voice that rocks you to sleep tonight. Because it's true, and because it's time you believed it.